While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners. Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I'm your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 390, The Brain Chemistry of Sex. Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Now, before we get started with this episode, I just want to preface that I am not an expert when it comes to the brain. Based on my research, what I am sharing with you today is, in good information, but if I happen to get any of it wrong, I'm really sorry about that, but we're going to do our best. All right. So have you ever wondered why you can feel like a completely different person during sex than you do afterward? Or why sometimes you're totally in the mood and open to trying new things, and other times you feel like you're just going through the motions? Maybe you've noticed that you and your partner seem to be on completely different pages. One of you wants to keep exploring while the other one just wants to cuddle and be done. Okay, here's a big one. Have you ever agreed to something sexually that seemed exciting in the moment, but then afterward you felt weird about it or couldn't understand why you even wanted to try it? Or maybe you've experienced the opposite. You've been curious about something, but when the moment comes, you just can't get yourself to feel interested. If any of this sounds familiar, you're not broken and your relationship isn't flawed. What you're experiencing is completely normal human neurobiology. And understanding what's actually happening in your brain during different phases of the sexual experience can be absolutely game-changing for your sex life. See, most of us think that sexual desire and response is pretty straightforward. You either want it or you don't. You either enjoy it or you don't. But the reality is that your brain goes through these very distinct neurological phases during the sexual experience. And each phase creates completely different emotional states, different levels of openness, different desires, and different needs. So when you understand these phases, what's happening chemically in your brain before arousal, during arousal, and after orgasm, suddenly so many things start to make sense. You'll understand why timing matters so much in sexual conversations. You'll understand why you feel so different during sex than after sex. You'll understand how to work with your brain's natural processes instead of fighting against them. Now, this isn't just interesting trivia. This is practical knowledge that can help you get in the mood more easily, stay present during sex, communicate better with your partner, and stop judging yourself for having completely normal neurological responses. So let's dive in to what's actually happening in your brain, starting from before you're even aroused all the way through the post-orgasm cuddle time, shall we? All right. So before any sexual arousal even begins, your brain is what we call default mode. So you're probably thinking about work, the kids, what you need to do tomorrow, whether you remember to pay that bill. Your stress hormone cortisol might be elevated from the day's challenges, and your brain is scattered across 100 different concerns. Now, this is really normal, but it's also why so many struggle with getting in the mood. Your brain literally needs to shift gears to become receptive to sexual desire. Now, think of it like trying to watch a romantic movie while you're still thinking about your presentation for work tomorrow. Part of your brain just isn't available. Now, here's what's fascinating. You actually can influence this transition. Brain science shows us that certain activities help shift you from that scattered stress mode brain into a more receptive, present-focused state. For example, deep breathing can actually change your brain chemistry. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest system, as opposed to your fight or flight system. Now, this lowers cortisol levels and makes space for other neurochemicals to emerge. I had a client who told me she started taking 5 deep breaths before any physical intimacy with her husband. She said, it sounds so simple, but those 5 breaths literally help me arrive in my body instead of staying stuck in my head. That's neuroscience at work. All right, physical touch also helps this transition, but we're not talking about sexual touch yet, okay? I'm talking about non-sexual physical connection. So when you hug someone for 20 seconds or longer, you start releasing oxytocin. And that bonding hormone we'll talk more about later. But in this context, oxytocin helps calm your nervous system and makes you more receptive to intimacy. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed when you and your partner just sit and talk and touch each other's hands or cuddle on the couch, you naturally start to feel more connected? That's your brain chemistry shifting. You're moving from that scattered, busy brain state into a more present, connected space. Okay? This is why so many women want the emotional connection before the physical connection. They need to get out of their heads, into their bodies, and start to feel that more connected before they can shift into the physical. Now, eye contact does the same thing that talking and touching does. There's actual research showing that sustained eye contact increases oxytocin production. So when couples spend a few minutes just looking at each other, really looking, not just glancing, they're literally changing their brain chemistry to be more receptive to intimacy. Now, can you hack this process? To some extent, yes. If you know that your brain needs to shift gears, you can be intentional about creating conditions that support that shift. Maybe that's taking a shower together, not sexually necessarily, but to wash away the day and to just be present with each other. Maybe it's putting phones away for 30 minutes and just talking. Maybe it's dancing together in the kitchen or giving each other a back rub. So one couple I worked with figured out that they needed what they called transition time. They realized that trying to go from dealing with kids' homework straight into sexual intimacy just wasn't working because their brains were still in parent mode. So they started building in like 20 to 30 minutes of just being together as a couple first. Sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting quietly together, sometimes doing something playful. They weren't trying to get aroused in those 20 minutes. They were just letting their brains shift from busy adult to connected partner mode. All right, so now this is where things get really interesting. Once arousal begins, and I mean actual physical and mental arousal, not just deciding you want to have sex, your brain becomes incredibly neuroplastic. Think of neuroplasticity like your brain being a piece of clay that's warm and moldable. When you're aroused, your brain is literally more open to new experiences, sensations, and ideas than it normally is. So this happens when you're releasing dopamine. That's your brain's want chemical. And here's what most people don't understand about dopamine. It's not actually about pleasure, even though we often think it is. Dopamine is about seeking, wanting, anticipating. It's what makes you lean in, pay attention, get curious. It's what makes a dog perk up when it hears a can opener, or what makes you feel excited when you're texting with someone you have a crush on. So when you're building towards orgasm, you're in this heightened state where everything feels more intense, more interesting, more possible. And your brain is essentially saying, pay attention. This might be really good. Stay curious. So let me give you some examples of what this looks like. Maybe you've noticed that during foreplay or the build up to sex, you might be more open to trying something new that you'd never considered before. Last week, I had a client tell me when we're really into it, I find myself wanting to do things that would embarrass me to even think about normally. That's neuroplasticity in action. Or your partner touches you in a way that normally might tickle or feel weird, but in that aroused state, it feels amazing. That's because your neuroplastic brain is interpreting sensations differently than it would in a non-aroused state. Or think about this. Okay, have you ever been in the middle of sex and had this random thought pop into your head about trying a different position or doing something you saw in a movie, that's dopamine-driven neuroplasticity. Your brain is in this exploratory, curious state where it's more open to novel experiences. That's also why fantasy often becomes more vivid and creative during arousal. Your dopamine-soaked brain is more willing to explore ideas and scenarios that might seem silly or embarrassing in your regular state of mind. So this neuroplastic state during arousal isn't just great for exploring physical sensations. It's also the perfect time to practice new thoughts and belief systems about yourself, your body, and your sexuality. So if your brain is more moldable and open during change during arousal, that means it's also more receptive to new ways of thinking. Those limiting beliefs that feel so solid and unchangeable in your everyday mind, they become much more flexible when your brain is flooded with dopamine. Now, this is huge because especially if you struggle with negative thoughts about your body, your sexual worth, or your desirability, those thoughts of like, I don't look good enough, or I'm not sexy enough, or my partner doesn't really want me, I'm bad at this. In your regular state of mind, those thoughts can feel like concrete facts. But during arousal, when your brain is more neuroplastic, they become much easier to shift. So I worked with a client who spent years believing she was not attractive to her husband and he didn't really desire her. So she would get caught up in worrying about how her stomach looked or whether she was making the right sounds. But we started working with her aroused neuroplastic state. And when she was already turned on and feeling good, I taught her to practice new thoughts like, my husband chooses me. I'm desirable exactly as I am. My body is capable of amazing pleasure. Now, there was this incredible difference between those new thoughts that felt fake and impossible during her regular mindset, but started feeling true and natural when she practiced them during her arousal. So her brain was literally more capable and of accepting and integrating these new beliefs because of the neuroplasticity. And this doesn't just have to happen during partnered sex. Like it can also happen if you're just doing things on your own. And I think it can actually be a really great way of trying to practice these new thoughts and beliefs when you're on your own. Now, it's not magic. You still have to practice these thoughts consistently, but doing it during arousal when your brain is most open to change, it can make the process so much faster and more effective than trying to shift the beliefs when you're in your very analytical everyday mindset. And I think everyone can do this. When you notice that you're in that aroused, dopamine-rich state, try practicing thoughts that contradict your usual limiting beliefs. Instead of, I don't look good enough, try, my partner loves my body. Instead of, I'm not good at this, try, I'm learning and growing. Instead of, this is too much, try, I deserve to feel this good. The key is to practice these thoughts when they feel more believable, when your neuroplastic brain is open to new possibilities. You're not trying to convince yourself of something that feels completely untrue. You're taking advantage of a natural window when your brain is more receptive to positive change. Now, why is this understanding so important? Because it explains why sexual experiences can feel so different from one time to another. It's not just about technique or even attraction, it's about brain chemistry. So when you're in that neuroplastic state, even familiar touches and activities can feel completely different because your brain is processing them differently. It also explains why some people struggle with staying present during sex. If you're not releasing enough dopamine, maybe because you're stressed, distracted, or not adequately aroused, your brain won't enter that neuroplastic state. You'll stay in your regular analytical mind that's thinking about your to-do list or worrying about how you look or sound. Now, can you influence this? Absolutely. This is where understanding what creates arousal for you becomes crucial. And it's different for everyone. Some people need more physical stimulation to release dopamine. Others need more mental stimulation, like talking fantasy or anticipation. Some need emotional connection first. Some need novelty or a sense of adventure. So I worked with a woman who realized that she needed to feel desired before she could get truly aroused. Not just wanted for sex, but desired as a person. So she and her husband started a practice where he would tell her specific things he found attractive about her, not just her body, but her mind, her personality, the way she handled something that day. This mental and emotional stimulation helped trigger the dopamine release that made her brain more neuroplastic and receptive to physical arousal. Another client figured out that he needed some element of novelty to really get his dopamine going. Not necessarily trying crazy new things, but just small changes, different locations in the house, different times of day, different approaches to foreplay. His brain needed that sense of exploration to really open up. And the key insight here is that the more aroused you are, meaning the more dopamine you're releasing, the more neuroplastic your brain becomes, and the more neuroplastic your brain is, the better sex tends to feel because you're more present, more receptive, and more open to pleasure. Plus, you have this incredible opportunity to literally rewire limiting beliefs about your sexuality. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and where a lot of couples get confused. The moment you have an orgasm, everything changes neurologically. You're not releasing dopamine anymore. Instead, you're getting a flood of serotonin and oxytocin. Serotonin is your calm down chemical. It creates feelings of peace, satisfaction, and contentment. It's the same neurotransmitter that gets boosted by antidepressants. Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone. It makes you feel connected, trusting, and relaxed. These are beautiful, important chemicals, but they do something really significant. They end that neuroplastic state. They essentially tell your brain, okay, we're done exploring now, time to rest and recover. This is why there's such a dramatic shift in how you feel before orgasm versus after. Before orgasm, you might feel adventurous, excited, open to trying new things, maybe even a little wild or uninhibited. After orgasm, you probably want to cuddle or sleep or just lie there feeling peaceful and connected. You might feel emotionally tender or even a little vulnerable. That's not a character flaw or a lack of passion. That's neurobiology doing exactly what it was designed to do. I had a client tell me once, I feel like I become this different person during sex, and then afterwards I go back to being myself. And I said, you kind of do. Your brain chemistry is literally different during arousal than it is after orgasm. Neither version is more or less like you. They're just different neurological states. So this explains so many things couples struggle with, like why one partner might want to keep going or try something new right when the other partner is feeling done and wants to snuggle, or why one partner might agree to something during sex that you feel weird about afterward. Or it's not that you're lying or being fake, you were genuinely in a different neurological state where the idea seemed appealing. So here's another common example. Have you ever had an amazing sexual experience, but then felt a little sad or empty afterward, even though you enjoyed it? This can happen when your serotonin levels spike after orgasm. Some people experience what researchers call post-coital dysphoria, a temporary feeling of sadness after sex that has nothing to do with the quality of the experience and everything to do with neurochemistry. Or maybe you've noticed that right after orgasm, you or your partner become really talkative and want to share feelings and bond. That's oxytocin at work. It makes you feel connected and trusting, so you want to deepen that emotional intimacy. So understanding the shift is crucial because it helps you have realistic expectations. You can't expect your partner to stay in that exploratory, dopamine-driven state indefinitely, and you can't expect yourself to feel the same way during the buildup as you do after the release. This is a quick reminder. My Embrace You retreat is January 29th through February 1st in St. George, Utah, and I still have spots available. This is 4 days for you. We're talking catered meals, powerful classes, amazing guest speakers, and professional boudoir photography with hair and makeup included. This is your chance to strengthen your sexual self and your marriage in a supportive, judgment-free environment. The deposit is just $500 and it's due by the end of October. Total investment is between $1,500 and $3,000 depending on your choice of accommodations. If you've been thinking about it, this is your sign. Go to amandalauder.com/retreat and grab your spot before October ends. So as much as you want to, you can't really hack this system completely. I know we live in a world where we want to optimize everything, but certain experiences create certain chemicals, and those chemicals create specific emotional states. You can't just decide to stay in that dopamine-driven neuroplastic state indefinitely. Can you imagine trying to stay excited about Christmas morning for 3 hours straight? Eventually, your brain would crash from all that dopamine. The serotonin and oxytocin after orgasm aren't there to ruin your fun. They're there to help your nervous system regulate and recover. But understanding this can actually improve your sex life in huge ways. So let me break down some specific applications. First is timing your communication. So if you want to have a conversation about your sex life or explore new desires together, don't do it right after orgasm when someone's brain is flooded with calm down chemicals. Their neuroplastic, curious brain just went offline. So instead, do it when you're both alert and engaged, maybe during some non-sexual intimacy when you can think clearly but still feel connected. I worked with a couple who kept having the same fight. She would want to talk about their sex life right after they were intimate, and he would seem disinterested or even resistant. She interpreted this as him not caring about her or the relationship. But what was really happening was that his post-orgasm brain was in bonding and recovery mode, not problem-solving mode. So when they moved these conversations to other times, maybe during a walk together or while they were cuddling before sleep, he was much more responsive and engaged. The second is introducing new things. So if you know that your brain is most open and exploratory during arousal, that might be the time to gently introduce something new that you've been wanting to try. Not by springing it on your partner, but by having conversations beforehand about things you're both curious about, and then letting that natural neuroplasticity work in your favor. So one couple I worked with had been wanting to experiment with some light role play, but they felt really awkward by it. And so I suggested they talk about it outside the bedroom first, get comfortable with the idea, and then bring it up again when they were already aroused and in that more open, playful, neurological state. And the difference was dramatic. What felt embarrassing in their regular state felt fun and exciting in their aroused state. The third is managing expectations. So if you're someone who tends to feel emotionally vulnerable or even regretful after sex, understanding that your brain chemistry has literally shifted can help you be more compassionate with yourself. Those feelings aren't necessarily about sex that you just had. They might be about your serotonin-soaked brain processing the experience differently than your dopamine-fueled brain was experiencing in the moment. I had a client who would often feel anxious after really good sex. She couldn't understand why amazing sex would leave her feeling worried and insecure. And when we talked about the post-orgasm neurochemistry, she realized that the shift from high dopamine to high serotonin was creating this emotional vulnerability. And just understanding that it was normal and temporary helped her stop spiraling into worry about her relationship. So how can we use this knowledge practically? Here are some strategies that work with your neurobiology instead of against it. First, for getting in the mood, remember that your brain needs to transition from daily life mode to intimate connection mode. And you can facilitate this transition by creating rituals that signal the shift. Maybe that's changing into something comfortable, lighting candles, or putting on music that helps you feel more present. You can practice mindfulness or breathing exercises together. Even 5 minutes of focused breathing can help lower cortisol and make space for desire to emerge. You can start with non-sexual touch and connection, hold hands, give each other a back rub, or just sit close and talk about your day. And this helps your nervous system shift gears. And you can also remove distractions. Put your phones away, turn off the TV, create a space where your brain can actually focus on your partner. One couple started what they call a landing practice. So when they both get home from work, they would sit together for 10 minutes and just decompress, sharing what their day was like, what they were worried about, what went well. They weren't trying to get aroused. They were just helping their brains transition from work mode to relationship mode. And they found this simple practice made them much more available to each other for sex later. The second thing is for staying in the mood longer. So since dopamine creates that neuroplastic exploratory state, you want to keep dopamine flowing without rushing towards orgasm. So you need to slow down. The faster you move towards orgasm, the faster you'll trigger that serotonin oxytocin release that ends the exploratory phase. So build anticipation throughout the day. Text each other, leave notes, touch each other in passing. This keeps dopamine levels elevated. Focus on the journey, not the destination. So when your goal is exploration and connection rather than just reaching orgasm, you naturally stay in that dopamine-rich state longer. You can also try edging or taking breaks. This keeps you in that aroused neuroplastic state without immediately triggering the calming chemicals of orgasm. So I worked with a couple who realized that they were rushing through foreplay to get to the main event, and I say that in air quotes. And when they started focusing on staying in that playful exploratory phase longer, they discovered that their entire sexual experience became more intense and satisfying. The next is for using neuroplasticity to your advantage. So remember that when you're aroused, your brain is most open to new ways of thinking. And so we want to use this to your benefit. Practice positive thoughts about your body and your sexuality when you're already feeling good and turned on. Challenge limiting beliefs during arousal when they feel less solid and more changeable. If you notice negative thoughts creeping in during sex, just gently redirect to more positive, pleasure-focused thoughts. And remember that this neuroplastic state is temporary, so take advantage of it when it's available. And then for after sex, we really want to understand that post-orgasm state and help you work with it instead of against it. So number one is just expect the shift. Don't be surprised when you or your partner goes from passionate to peaceful. That's supposed to happen. Use that oxytocin for bonding. That's a great time for emotional intimacy, sharing feelings, cuddling, talking about your connection. And remember, like the next sexual encounter starts when the first one ends. So you can just keep that going by that emotional bonding afterwards. Be gentle with each other. You're both in a neurologically vulnerable state at that point. So this isn't the time for criticism or difficult conversations. And make sure you're not judging your thoughts or your feelings. If you feel sad or anxious or different than you did during arousal, remember that your brain chemistry's changed. And then understanding individual differences. So people's brains respond differently to these different neurochemicals. Some people release dopamine easily and get aroused quickly. Others need more time and the right conditions. Some people's post-orgasm serotonin and oxytocin create blissful bonding feelings. Others might feel emotionally raw or even a little disconnected. There's no right way for your brain to respond here. The key is understanding your own patterns and your partner's patterns and working with them instead of against them. So I had one client whose husband would get very talkative and emotionally open after sex, while she wanted to just be quiet and close. She thought something was wrong with her because she didn't want to process feelings right then. But when she understood that they were just responding to post-orgasm neurochemistry differently, she could appreciate his need to connect verbally while also honoring her needs for quiet closeness. Now, the beautiful thing about understanding this neurobiology is that it helps you work with your brain instead of against it. You can appreciate the exploration phase for what it is, and you can appreciate the bonding and recovery phase for what they are, without expecting one to be like the other. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The dopamine gets you excited and open to the experience. The serotonin and oxytocin help you bond and recover. Neither one is better or worse. They are just different phases of the same beautiful process. So when you understand what's happening neurologically, you can stop fighting your brain and start partnering with it. You can create conditions that support the transition into arousal. You can stay in that neuroplastic state longer when you want to. You can use that neuroplasticity to shift limiting beliefs about your sexuality, and you can appreciate the post-orgasm phase for the bonding opportunity that it is. Now, most importantly, you can stop judging yourself or your partner for having normal neurological responses to sexual experiences. Your brain is not broken if you feel different after sex than during sex. Your relationship is not flawed if you or your partner respond differently to these neurochemical changes. This is just how human brains work. And when you understand it, you can use that knowledge to create more satisfying, connected, and enjoyable sexual experiences. All right, my friends, this was a long one, but I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned a lot. Remember, love's a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. And don't forget to sign up for the retreat. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.